What happens when the world's most powerful nations slam the door in your face, but the one rival they fear the most opens it wide? This is not just a story about a passport. It's about pride, betrayal, and a global twist no one saw coming. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe now to Faso Histories and join us as we uncover more powerful stories that the world needs to hear. What happens when the world tells you your identity is worthless? AES found out in the most brutal way. But this rejection was just the beginning. It began with silence, the kind that creeps into crowded airports and turns them into graveyards of frustration. The AES government had proudly unveiled its new national passport, a sleek design embossed with national symbols, a mark of sovereignty meant to open doors across the globe. But within days, those doors slammed shut. Immigration. Officers at Western airports frowned at the booklet, shook their heads, and ordered travelers aside. Families arriving for vacations were detained, businessmen on critical deals were deported, and students carrying dreams of education abroad were forced back onto planes. News spread like wildfire. Videos of crying mothers at terminals, fathers, arguing helplessly with officials, and students stranded in foreign cities filled television screens. The passport, instead of being a ticket to opportunity, had become a symbol of humiliation. Markets in AES buzzed with anger. Shopkeepers whispered of betrayal. Cafes became arenas of heated debates, and neighborhoods trembled with one bitter question: why must our identity be dismissed by others? Inside the halls of power, the government was in turmoil. Ministers shouted across tables, some urging immediate submission to Western demands, others arguing for defiance. At the center of it all sat the president, calm yet visibly burning inside. He spoke little, but every pause in the heated discussion carried his weight. For him, this rejection wasn't just a diplomatic insult, it was a message carved deep into the nation's pride. You are not equal. The West offered no explanations, no negotiations. Official letters remained unanswered, and foreign embassies grew cold in their reception. AES citizens abroad reported increased surveillance, frozen bank accounts, and blocked transactions. Within weeks, the economy staggered. Exports rotted at ports, scholarships were revoked, and foreign investors pulled out. Families lost savings, businesses collapsed, and despair spread like an unchecked disease. But hidden within the despair was a spark. The rejection hurt, but it awakened something deeper, a realization that dependence on Western validation was a fragile chain. Late at night, the president stood alone in his office, looking at the rejected passport on his desk. His nation had been humiliated, but humiliation often breeds resolve. And as whispers grew across AES about a future free from Western control, the president knew one thing: the fight for dignity had just begun. Yet in the silence of international corridors, another question lingered like a storm cloud. If the West has shut every door, who, if anyone, will dare to open one? When every Western door slammed shut, hope seemed dead. But then, from the East, an unexpected hand reached out and changed everything. The answer came quietly, almost like a rumor carried by desert winds. While Western nations ignored AES, whispers spread of an unexpected hand reaching out from the East, China. At first, no one believed it. Could the world's rising giant recognize a passport the West had crushed? But then came the confirmation. Beijing officially announced it would honor the AES passport. Not only that, it offered trade deals, scholarships, and a promise of partnership. The announcement hit AES like thunder. Crowds poured into the streets, waving their passports high in defiance. Students once stranded abroad cheered as visas reopened through Chinese embassies. Businessmen rushed to forge new trade routes, while farmers dreamed of markets larger than they'd ever imagined. Overnight, humiliation turned to hope. Yet beneath the celebrations lay suspicion. Some whispered that China's support was not charity, but strategy. Could this be a trap? An exchange of one master for another? Even inside the government, ministers split into camps. One side hailed China as savior, the other warned of hidden chains. The president listened, patient but unreadable, his silence, masking calculations only he knew. Western powers, however, did not stay silent for long. Media outlets blasted AES as reckless, claiming the nation had sold its sovereignty. Analysts warned of debt traps, of Beijing's claws sinking into Africa once more. Sanctions tightened quietly, banks froze more transactions, and AES officials abroad found themselves under constant scrutiny. The rejection had turned into something larger, a test of whether a small nation could defy the global order. In the villages and cities of AES, hope and doubt danced together. Families rejoiced at the idea of their children studying in Beijing or Shanghai, yet old men at tea stalls muttered about the price of new alliances. Students filled classrooms with renewed energy, chanting slogans of independence, but workers in factories feared losing Western buyers. The president, meanwhile, worked in silence. He signed deals with Chinese companies, welcomed engineers, and began secret talks about technology transfers. Each move felt like a gamble. One wrong step could push AES into bankruptcy, or worse, war. One evening, as the sun dipped over the capital, he stood before a cheering crowd. His words carried both fire and caution. "We are not choosing East over West. We are choosing ourselves. We will no longer beg for dignity. We will build it." Cheers thundered through the streets, but in the quiet shadows, foreign agents listened carefully. For if China's embrace gave AES hope, it also placed the nation at the center of a storm far greater than anyone imagined. The war didn't start with bombs. It began in shadows. Banks fell, grids failed, secrets leaked. Someone wanted AES to break, but the fight had only begun. The war did not begin with guns. It began with shadows. Soon after AES aligned with China, strange disruptions shook the nation. Banks collapsed overnight as foreign currencies vanished from circulation. Factories halted when vital parts failed to arrive. Farmers complained their harvests rotted after shipping companies suddenly canceled contracts. The rejection had evolved into a silent siege. Worse still, AES found itself under relentless cyber attacks. Government websites crashed, private data was leaked, and electricity grids faltered. Social media flooded with anonymous voices painting the president as reckless, a puppet of Beijing. Foreign television channels amplified these doubts, warning that AES had chosen isolation. For ordinary citizens, confusion reigned. Was the nation on the path to freedom or ruin? Inside government offices, trust frayed. Intelligence agencies warned of traitors leaking state secrets. Suspicion spread like wildfire. Ministers eyed one another and loyal officials grew paranoid. The president responded with secrecy. He ordered projects hidden in the desert, factories, guarded at night, and communication lines rerouted through secure channels. He knew this was not chaos. It was sabotage. Somewhere unseen enemies were pulling strings. The youth of AES refused to stay silent. Online, they launched campaigns with hashtags demanding dignity and independence. "We will not kneel" became a rallying cry, plastered on walls and painted across social media. Farmers guarded their crops from theft, while soldiers conducted quiet drills far from cameras. The nation was preparing for something larger, though no one dared say it aloud. China tightened its grip. Engineers arrived to repair grids, ships unloaded vital equipment, and new technology centers rose overnight. But with every step forward, threats escalated. Western warships appeared offshore, circling like vultures. International courts announced investigations. Sanctions deepened, strangling AES's economy. It was no longer just about passports. It was about whether a small nation could survive when the world's giants clashed. At night, the president walked the corridors of the palace alone. He stared at maps marked with new trade routes, sabotage incidents, and Chinese supply lines. He knew he was playing a game far bigger than his country, yet he also knew backing down meant humiliation forever. As dawn broke one morning, intelligence reports confirmed his fears. Enemy agents had been spotted near critical infrastructure. Sabotage wasn't a rumor anymore, it was happening. And in the cold morning light, the president whispered to himself, "If they want war, let it begin." In the shadows, but we will not be the ones to break. In a midnight decision, the president risked everything. One signature could free the nation or chain it forever. This was the gamble of a lifetime. By now, AES stood at a crossroads. The economy was bleeding, the people restless, and foreign pressure relentless. Yet instead of retreat, the president made a daring choice, a gamble so audacious it could either save the nation or destroy it. In a midnight meeting, surrounded by his closest advisors, he spoke firmly. "We cannot survive by bending. If they think we are weak, they will crush us. If they think we are alone, they will crush us. But if we show unity and strength, they will think twice." The plan was simple but dangerous. AES would sign a comprehensive pact with China. Trade, technology, agriculture, even military training. It would mean putting the nation's future in Beijing's hands, at least for now. Critics warned this was surrender disguised as partnership, but the president insisted it was survival. When the pact was signed, the streets erupted. Fireworks lit the skies, crowds sang in unison, and young men waved flags from rooftops. For the first time since the rejection, the passport became a symbol of pride. Farmers envisioned exporting crops eastward, engineers dreamed of building new industries, and students prepared for scholarships abroad. Hope returned. But so did fear. Western powers responded with fury. Sanctions tightened further. Banks froze. International transactions and whispers of military intervention filled the air. Warships edged closer to AES's shores. The gamble had lit a fire, and no one could predict whether it would warm or consume them. The president doubled down on security. Factories ran day and night, guarded by soldiers. Engineers dug deep into the desert, building facilities no outsider could see. Drones patrolled borders, while intelligence hunted for saboteurs. Every citizen felt the tension. Markets buzzed. With rumors of spies, schools held drills, and villages prepared for shortages. Yet in the midst of fear, something remarkable happened. Unity. For decades, AES had been divided by class, region, and politics. Now, faced with a common enemy, people came together. Strangers shared food. Families sheltered one another, and crowds gathered nightly in public squares to chant songs of defiance. Sala, gamble was working, not just on paper, but in spirit. AES had found something far more powerful than foreign approval, self-belief. But the question lingered like a shadow. Would belief be enough against the wrath of the world's mightiest powers? What began as humiliation ended as history. AES called the world to its doorstep, and the ignored rose together. But victory came with a price. The climax came swiftly, like a storm breaking after long silence. With the China Pact in place and the West escalating threats, the world braced for open confrontation. Analysts predicted collapse, war, even invasion. Yet what happened next shocked everyone. Instead of waiting for fate, AES took the initiative. The president called for an emergency international summit, not hosted in Washington, not in Brussels, not even in Beijing, but in AES itself. Invitations went to dozens of nations, especially those long ignored by Western powers. The message was clear. If our future is to be decided, it will not be without us. The world watched in disbelief as delegates from across Africa, Asia, and even South America arrived. Flags of small nations fluttered proudly, their leaders walking with newfound dignity. For the first time, the story was not about the West or China. It was about AES leading a chorus of the ignored. Inside the summit hall, the president spoke with fire. They rejected us. They mocked us. They tried to starve us. But we stand. And today, we say this: the dignity of nations does not belong to the powerful. It belongs to the people who refuse to kneel. The hall erupted. Leaders applauded, some with tears in their eyes, others with determination in their fists. What began as a rejected passport had become the spark of a new order, an alliance of nations tired of waiting for permission to exist. The West seethed, issuing threats and warnings. But the tide had shifted. The AES passport, once dismissed, now carried the weight of defiance and solidarity. Students carried it proudly across campuses in Beijing, Nairobi, and Caracas. Farmers stamped it onto crates of food bound for new markets. It was more than a travel document. It was a banner of rebellion. As the summit closed, the president stood at a balcony overlooking crowds that stretched to the horizon. Children waved flags, women sang, and men held their passports to the sky like weapons of hope. For the first time in generations, the nation felt not like a victim of history, but its author. Yet in his heart, the president knew the battle was far from over. Enemies would not vanish overnight, and alliances carried hidden costs. But for now, the nation had won something priceless: dignity. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of defiance and promise, the world realized the truth. The story of AES was no longer just about a passport. It was about rewriting the rules of power itself.